The moment I heard my own son planning to dump me in a nursing home, in a language he thought I didn't understand, I knew something inside me had finally died. I was standing behind the tall wine display at Maple and Pine, trying not to wrinkle the blouse I'd ironed twice that afternoon. I had arrived early, too early, because I wanted tonight to feel normal, maybe even kind. But before I could take another breath, I heard my son's voice drifting from the booth ahead of me. Smooth. Relaxed. Careful. Once she signs the papers, we'll move her into the care home and be done with it, Evan said, still in the Spanish he was certain I didn't understand. I froze. Not dramatically. Not visibly. I became the kind of still you feel in the body, not the face. Like something inside has suddenly stopped trying. Beside him, Lena, her voice strained with the effort of speaking Spanish, clicked her tongue. She won't sign easily. You'll have to pressure her. That house is worth too much. My house. My life. My memories. I didn't flinch. I didn't gasp. I simply stood there, my purse clutched to my ribs like someone might snatch it from me next. My son, my only child, was discussing my future like he was selling an old car. He chuckled. Lena leaned closer. They spoke like people who believed age made a woman deaf, slow, disposable. They didn't know I'd been learning Spanish quietly for years, just to challenge my own brain, just to keep myself from fading out of the world. Turns out, keeping myself sharp saved me. I stepped back, letting the low hum of plates and silverware drown out their words. I didn't go to the table. I didn't even let them see my face. Instead, I slipped out the restaurant door, into the warm spring evening, feeling the air wrap around me like a strange reminder that I was still here. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't shattered. I was clear, clearer than I had been in years. They thought they were planning my ending. They had no idea I was just getting started. Because the moment I reached that lonely bus stop bench, one truth hit me so hard it felt electric. If they were ready to erase me, they were about to learn what happens when a mother refuses to disappear. I didn't sit at that bus stop because I needed a ride. I sat because I needed distance, physical, emotional, spiritual, any kind. The streetlight above me flickered, buzzing like it was annoyed by my presence. Fine. I was annoyed with myself, too. The air was warm for early spring, thick with the smell of rain hiding somewhere in the clouds. My hands were trembling, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. It's funny. Clarity doesn't always arrive like lightning. Sometimes it crawls in quietly and sits beside you like an old friend you forgot you once had. I folded my hands in my lap. They still smelled faintly of the lavender soap I used before leaving home. I had washed them longer than usual that evening, thinking about how I wanted to look put together for dinner. Presentable. Worth something. What a foolish thing to hope for at 66. I'd even worn the pearl earrings my husband, Victor, gave me on our 10th anniversary. He's been gone 15 years, but every now and then, I still catch myself waiting for his voice to guide me. He used to tell me, Maggie, don't worry so much about Evan. He'll come back to you when he grows up. Well, he grew up, but he never came back. At least, not the version of him I raised. The truth is, I'd been losing him for years. The rushed phone calls, the distracted visits, the way he'd talk about my home like it was some temporary stop on his way to wealth. And Lena, always polite, always smiling, but with eyes that never once saw me as anything more than an obstacle. But hearing them plot my future? That wasn't distance. That was erasure. Cars passed slowly along the road. A drizzle began to fall, soft and cold. I pulled my coat tighter around me, the one with a loose button I kept forgetting to fix. Maybe I'd been forgetting a lot of things. Like how easy it is to ignore warning signs when they come wrapped in the face of your child. A bus hissed to a stop near me, doors sliding open with a mechanical groan. I didn't get up. I just shook my head at the driver. He nodded and drove off. No, I wasn't going anywhere. Not yet. Because what do you do when the people you love start to plan your disappearance? As the bus pulled away, one question echoed in my mind. If my own son could throw me away this easily, what else had he already decided without me? By the time I finally stood up from that cold metal bench, the drizzle had turned into a steady mist, coating my hair with a thin layer of dampness. I didn't care. I felt strangely awake. Like someone had flipped a switch inside me I didn't know existed. I walked toward the main road, ignoring the ache in my knees. Through the trees, I could still see the restaurant windows glowing warmly. I imagined Evan and Lena sitting there, glancing at the entrance, wondering why I hadn't shown up to be served on a platter like the rest of their plans. Maybe Lena would tap her nails on the table. Maybe Evan would rehearse what he'd say to get me to sign. They had no idea I'd already heard everything. A taxi slowed next to me. The driver, a quiet man in his 70s, silver hair, soft eyes, gestured for me to get in. I didn't argue. I didn't want to sit out in the rain pretending the world would fix itself if I stayed still long enough. During the ride, I stared out the window, watching the city drift by in soft, blurred shapes. Closing shops. Umbrellas bobbing down sidewalks. People laughing under awnings. Life moving. Unbothered by the small earthquake happening inside me. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like someone's mother. I felt like someone waking up. The taxi pulled into my driveway. My porch light glowed, something I must have forgotten to turn off. It greeted me like an old friend, the only steady thing left. Inside, I didn't turn on the lights right away. I stood in the dark hallway, hand gripping the edge of the little table by the door. I breathed in the familiar scents, lemon oil, chamomile sachets, the faintest trace of Victor's aftershave lingering from the closet. For a moment, I wasn't 66. I was just Maggie, a woman who had lived, loved, survived. I walked to the kitchen, filled a glass of water, and sat at the small table by the window. The same table where I once helped Evan with homework. The same table where Victor used to make me laugh over burnt toast and Sunday newspapers. How ordinary life can be, right up until your child decides you're inconvenient. I pressed my fingertips to the cool surface of the table, remembering Evan as a boy, bright-eyed, curious, affectionate. That boy would have cried if he knew what the man he became would say. That boy is gone. And maybe, just maybe, I had been pretending he wasn't. And as the rain tapped harder against the window, one thought hit me like a punch. If Evan could talk about me like a burden, what was he planning next, and how long had he been planning it? I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, and not because I was hurt, though maybe I should have been. No, I stayed awake because my mind felt alert, wide open, as if the truth they'd tried to hide had snapped something inside me back into focus. I sat in the dim glow of the living room lamp, listening to the old wall clock tick like it was counting down to something. Every second felt deliberate, patient, reminding me I was still here, still mine. Around 2 in the morning, I made a cup of mint tea, the kind I drink on nights when sleep refuses to visit. I held the warm mug in both hands and watched the street through the window. The pavement glistened from the rain, shining like the world had been scrubbed clean overnight. Funny how silence can make a person honest. The restaurant scene replayed in my head, the controlled tilt of Evan's voice, the careful urgency in Lena's. They talked about my future like it was a business plan, like I wasn't a fully breathing human being. I whispered into the empty room. They really thought I'd never understand. I sat at the kitchen table and reached for the small notepad I normally used for grocery lists. Tonight it felt more like survival. I clicked the pen and stared at the blank page, my breath steady, my heart surprisingly calm. I wasn't planning revenge. Revenge is a young person's game. Messy, hot, impatient. No, I needed something colder, cleaner. Something that didn't stain my heart the way theirs was stained with entitlement. I wrote the first line. Steps I must take. My handwriting looked different, sharper, smaller, almost unfamiliar. I felt like I was becoming someone new, or maybe becoming the person I used to be before life softened me. I wrote slowly. Go to the bank. Call an attorney. Review documents. Think. Don't rush. I underlined that last part. Don't rush. I had rushed a lot in my life. Rushed to forgive. Rushed to understand. Rushed to make excuses. But not this time. This time I would move carefully, deliberately, like someone laying down bricks for a house she plans to live in alone. By dawn, a pale blue light crept across the horizon. I stepped outside onto the porch. The air smelled damp and fresh, like endings or beginnings or both. And as I stood there watching the morning arrive, I realized something simple and terrifying. If I didn't protect myself, no one else would. But the moment my phone lit up with Evan's name, over and over, I knew something unsettling. My silence was already starting to scare them. By 7 a.m., my phone had already rung 6 times. Evan. Lena. Then Evan again. Each call buzzed across the porch table like an insect desperate to escape. I didn't pick up. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because I finally understood that silence is a language, too. One he wasn't used to hearing from me. I went inside, tied my hair back, washed my face, and looked at my reflection. I expected to see a woman crumbling. But the face staring back was steady. Older, sure, but grounded, almost fierce. Like someone who had finally stepped out of a fog she'd been living in for years. I grabbed my purse, slid the notepad inside, and locked the door behind me. The sound of the deadbolt clicking felt like a promise. The bank was quiet when I arrived. Morning sunlight poured through the glass doors, warm and bright. Too bright for the kind of decisions I came to make. A young man at the reception desk greeted me with a polite smile. The type reserved for elderly women who look like they might need assistance finding a chair. "I need to speak with a financial officer," I said before he could direct me anywhere. "It's urgent." He blinked, then nodded quickly. The woman who helped me, Mrs. Porter, mid-40s, calm eyes, escorted me into her office. The citrus scent of her candle mixed with the smell of paperwork and printers. "How can I assist you today, Mrs. Hayes?" I didn't clear my throat. I didn't hesitate. I simply said, "I need to revoke every form of access my son has to my accounts. Effective immediately." Her eyebrows lifted a fraction, but she didn't pry. Good. I wasn't in the mood to retell the story of my own undoing. She pulled up the authorizations. And just seeing Evan's name beside permissions I had forgotten I gave him, it almost made my fingers go cold. "Shall I remove all of these?" she asked. "All," I replied. Click. 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 The sound was gentle, but to me it felt like walls rising around me. Finally, after years of leaving myself exposed. When she handed me the confirmation papers, I held them like something sacred. Not because of money, but because of control. My control. The thing I had forgotten belonged to me. As I stepped back into the sunlight, the warmth hit my face like a quiet blessing. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't Evan's mother first. I was Maggie Hayes, a woman reclaiming her own life. But as I walked down the street toward the attorney's office, a chilling thought crept in. If this one move rattled Evan, how would he react when he discovered everything else I was about to change? The attorney's office sat in a narrow brick building squeezed between a bakery and an old thrift shop. It didn't look like the kind of place where life-changing decisions were made, but maybe that was the point. Quiet places often hide the loudest truths. I pushed open the glass door, and a small bell chimed overhead. The scent of old paper, printer ink, and peppermint drifted through the air. A receptionist with short blonde curls looked up and gave me a warm smile. "Good morning. How can we help you?" "I need to speak with someone about updating my legal documents," I said. "Today if possible." She nodded, glanced at her schedule, then motioned for me to sit. "You're in luck. Mr. Dalton had a cancellation. He'll be right with you." I sat down on a soft leather chair, clutching my purse as if it held the last pieces of my life. Maybe it did. My notepad was inside, folded to the page where I had written my steps. My plan wasn't polished, but it was mine. A door opened, and a tall man with gray hair and thoughtful eyes appeared. "Mrs. Hayes? I'm James Dalton. Come on back." His office looked exactly like the office of a man who had heard every secret in town. Heavy wooden desk, neatly stacked files, sunlight streaming through half-open blinds. I liked him already. "What would you like to review today?" he asked. I didn't sugarcoat it. "I want to protect myself," I said. "And my home. And I want to ensure my son can't force me into anything without my consent." Mr. Dalton leaned back, hands folded. His expression didn't shift. He didn't look surprised. That alone eased something in my chest. "Let's go through everything," he said gently. For the next hour, he guided me through documents I hadn't looked at in years. Property deeds, medical directives, power of attorney forms, will instructions. Every line felt like I was taking a piece of myself back. When he showed me the power of attorney form Evan had partial access to, I felt a cold wave slide across my skin. I had forgotten I even signed that. I had been younger then, still naive enough to believe that love was permanent. Mr. Dalton tapped his pen. Would you like to revoke this entirely? Yes, I said. Effective today. We notarized it, stamped it, finalized it, and with each signature, I felt more alive. Afterwards, he looked at me with a quiet seriousness. Mrs. Hayes, is everything all right? Are you in any kind of danger? I shook my head slowly. Not yet. He didn't ask for more. Good lawyers know when silence tells the real story. When I stepped out of the office, the sun had shifted higher in the sky, casting long shadows on the sidewalk. I felt lighter and heavier, all at once, because taking back control is empowering. But preparing for a storm is something else entirely. As I reached the end of the block, my phone buzzed with a new message, one that made my stomach twist, because Evan had finally stopped calling and started threatening. My phone buzzed again, vibrating in my hand like it had a heartbeat of its own. I didn't want to look, but dread has a strange pull. It drags your eyes to the very thing your mind wants to avoid. There it was. A message from Evan. Not the usual call me or where are you? No. This one was colder. Evan, Mom, what are you doing? Why aren't you answering? We need to talk about the paperwork. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I stared at the words, feeling the edges of the moment tighten around me. Harder? Harder for who? For him? For the woman he had planned to quietly shuffle away like an old sweater he didn't want to wear anymore? Another message came in before I could breathe. Evan. Lena said you left the restaurant without saying anything. That was irresponsible, Mom. You're not thinking clearly. A dry laugh escaped me. Not thinking clearly? I had never thought clearer in my life. People age, yes, but manipulation ages too. It becomes bold, entitled, confident you won't push back. Evan wasn't confused. He wasn't worried. He was losing control of a plan he thought would be easy. I kept walking down the sidewalk, past small storefronts and morning joggers. The world felt normal, but inside me something was cracking open in a way that was necessary. Then the third message came. The one that made me stop mid-step. Evan, if you're doing something stupid, it's going to affect everyone. Just sign the house transfer, so we can move forward. Why are you being difficult? There it was, the truth slipping out like poison from a loose cap. Move forward. Difficult. Stupid. Not once did he ask if I was all right. Not once did he sound concerned. He didn't want a mother. He wanted my signature. I slipped my phone back into my purse. Not because I was afraid, but because anger can make a person reckless. And I needed to stay steady. Me losing control would give him exactly what he wanted. When I reached home, I sat on the porch steps and let the sunlight wash over me. I let every memory, good and bad, settle in my chest like dust floating down in a quiet room. I thought about the little boy who used to pick dandelions and shove them into my hands like priceless gifts. I thought about the teenager who hugged me after his first heartbreak. I thought about the man who slowly began treating me like background noise. And now this man wanted to decide where I lived, how I lived, and when I stopped living independently. No, not anymore. But just as I stood up to go inside, a car I recognized turned slowly into my driveway. And when Evan stepped out, his face wasn't angry, it was dangerous. Evan stepped out of his car with a calmness that didn't match the storm brewing in his eyes. Calm men scare me more than angry ones. Anger is loud, predictable. But calm? Calme d'intention. He closed the driver's door gently, like he didn't want to disturb the air around him. His jaw was tight. His smile was thin. And the way he adjusted his jacket told me everything. He came here expecting a performance from me. Mom, he said, walking toward the porch. We need to talk. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. About what? He paused halfway up the steps, surprised I wasn't already explaining myself. For years, I had apologized before he even told me what I'd supposedly done wrong. But today, I let the silence sit between us like a wall. You left the restaurant, he began slowly. You didn't answer your phone. We were worried. Lie. He didn't even believe the sentence he spoke. I folded my hands in my lap. I heard everything, Evan. He froze. Just for a moment, but it was enough. His shoulders stiffened, his eyes narrowed, and that carefully arranged expression cracked at the edges. What exactly did you hear? He asked, choosing his words like they were needles. The Spanish conversation, I said. All of it. He blinked hard, startled, not at being caught, but at the realization that his own mother understood more than he ever bothered to know. Mom, you misunderstood. No. I cut in gently. I didn't. His face shifted. Not to guilt. Not to sadness. But irritation. Like I was an obstacle that suddenly grew legs and moved out of his path. Those conversations were about helping you, he said sharply. You're not in a position to live alone anymore. Lena and I just want what's best. What's best for who? I asked softly. He avoided my eyes. Things are complicated, he muttered. You can't take care of the house. You can't manage the bills. You're not thinking straight. There it was, the script. The narrative he needed to paint so his decisions looked noble instead of selfish. You sound rehearsed, I said. Like you've been preparing this talk for a while. His jaw clenched. He stepped another inch closer. Mom, don't fight me on this. You're making things harder. There it was again, harder. The word he used earlier in the message. I stood slowly, feeling my spine straighten in a way it hadn't in years. I'm not signing the house over, I said. His eyes darkened, really darkened. A shadow moved through them like something had slipped free. Then he leaned forward, voice low and chillingly even. You will. A cold wave ran through me. Not fear, but clarity. The kind that tells you a person is no longer who you remember. But before I could step back, before I could breathe, Evan said something I never expected. Something that proved this wasn't just about a house. It was about control he'd been waiting years to take. Evan's voice dropped lower, almost controlled, almost. Mom, you don't get it, he said. I've been handling things for years. Bills. Taxes. Maintenance. You think any of this runs without me? I stared at him, stunned, not by the lie, but by how confidently he believed it. You didn't handle anything, I said quietly. I did. He scoffed, shaking his head. And that's the problem. You think you're still capable. You're not. This house should have been mine years ago. Dad promised. My heart tightened. Your father promised you a future. Not my life. He stepped closer, and for the first time, I realized something terrible. He didn't see me as his mother anymore. He saw me as property he hadn't collected yet. You're overreacting, he snapped. Just sign the papers before things get messy. Messy, I repeated. He looked away, just for a second, but that second told the truth. He wasn't here for a conversation. He was here for compliance. You're not staying here alone, he insisted. Lena and I already made arrangements. Selling this place will give us all a clean start. I let out a slow, steady breath. You made arrangements, I said. Not me. His irritation cracked. Why are you being so difficult? Why now? Because now. I finally saw him clearly. I stepped back from the porch railing, chin lifted. I went to the bank, I said. And the attorney. Everything you had access to is gone. The way his face dropped, confusion, then disbelief, then anger. It was like watching a storm form in real time. You did what? He hissed. I protected myself, I said. Something I should have done a long time ago. For a moment, the air between us felt razor thin. Evan wasn't yelling. He wasn't pleading. He wasn't even pretending anymore. He was studying me, calculating, cornered, unprepared. You're making a mistake, he whispered. No, I said, my voice steady. You did. He stood there, fists clenching and unclenching, jaw twitching, eyes cold in a way that told me he wasn't shocked by what he said earlier. He was shocked I didn't fold. Finally, he stepped back from the stairs. This isn't over, he muttered. I met his eyes. No, Evan. It is. He turned and walked to his car, slow, stiff, furious. The engine started, growling like the anger inside him. When he pulled out of the driveway,